Hey guys, this is Solution PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Now You See Me by Dark Nymphs Translates, parenthesis, Dunkelniffen. The summary is, Stephanie's world is turned upside down when she witnesses a murder. The perpetrator, her father. The murder weapon, a magical sword. How will she cope in this new magical world? And can she cross her father's plans? Alright, without further ado, let's hop right in. Stephanie Brown ran. In her opinion, that was the only right thing to do when her own father had just murdered a man with a glowing sword. Although, maybe the man wasn't dead. He had just vanished, and Stephanie had made sure to do the same, just in a less magical way. Her feet pounded quickly and loudly on the pavement. She didn't know if she was being followed, and she couldn't hear anything through the pounding rain. Stephanie should have run into an alley. There, she could have shaken off any pursuer, but this was still Gotham, and the alleys were at least as dangerous as her father. A sob escaped her. When she had gotten up this morning, her father had been an asshole. Now he was a murderer too, and about to do something terrible. She had to get out of here. A door opened in front of her, blocking her path. Stephanie screamed in horror. There was no way she could stop in time. Someone pulled her into the building, preventing a crash. Her relief was fleeting because the stranger still held her wrist. Stephanie pulled away from him as she searched for a face in the darkness. Even the streets of Gotham were brighter than this room. Still, she had to admit that the room was warmer. Wait a minute, the person said. The voice was not only male, but also surprisingly gentle and young. He had an aura that she could only describe as magical. Her father had the same aura. She was about to rush out when the lights came on. It was the reception hall of a fortune teller. There were offers, decorations, crystal balls, and magical stuff everywhere. And in the middle of it all stood her savior. He must have been her age, had black hair, and wore a suit of the same color. The teenager would have been better suited to a funeral home or an office. His eyes shone with seriousness, and he didn't fit in with the surrounding nonsense. A free card reading, miss? He smiled. Stephanie had the feeling he was trying to be charming. She was also sure that he was completely failing at it. But in his awkward way, he was cute. Do you offer this to all the women? She asked, glancing discreetly towards the door. It was closed, and no one could see inside. She would be safe here for the time being because she had no connection to the place. The teenager grinned. Only to those who look like they're on the run. Stephanie froze. She expected him to question her. He did nothing of the sort, but just looked at her expectantly. He was waiting for an answer, she realized. Yes, why not? It doesn't cost me anything after all. Nothing but time, promised the black-haired man. By the way, I'm Tim. Purple, she lied smoothly. At least she felt guilty about it. Tim let her shuffle the cards. She watched him critically as she complied with his request. Think hard about the question you want to ask the cards. Shouldn't I tell you too? She teased him. Without a question, he wouldn't know what bullshit to tell her. To her surprise, the boy remained serious and shook his head. No, I don't need to know the question. He seemed to be thinking of something, but you need to tell me if it's a more complex or simple question. Depending on that, I'll adjust how many cards to give you information. Stephanie thought for a moment. What did she want to know? She didn't believe in it, but she also didn't want to waste the boy's time. And besides, she had just seen real magic. Right? How can I stop my father? That question was running through her head because she knew she had to stop him. It was her responsibility. She wasn't going to run away from it. Tim smiled, his eyes sparkling in the dim light. I can see it in your eyes, he said. Your question is important, but not difficult. He put the cards down and arranged the top 4 in a circle. The cross, he explained. That's a circle, she interrupted. He rolled his eyes. The position is still called the cross. It'll show you a direction. He hovered his pale hand over the left card. The first card reflects your question. To her own surprise, Stephanie sat up slightly to get a better view of the table. The High Priestess. He placed the card on the table. Stephanie flinched. How could Tim have known the card? Were they marked? If so, it was very inconspicuous. You demonstrate strength of will with your question. You don't need anything to enforce what you have already accepted as righteous for yourself. Whatever I tell you, you know you have to do it. He was vague, but Stephanie had to agree with him. She would stop her father. But how? His hands moved to the right card. This card will tell you what actions and emotions you should refrain from. That would be really helpful if it weren't all lies and deceit. The Emperor, he revealed the card, but upside down. You must beware of following your anger, for it will rob you of all control and chance of success. Stephanie grinned. She had often received this advice from her mother. Don't be such a hothead, Steph. But in this case, she probably shouldn't yell at her father. She didn't want to make acquaintance with the glowing sword. The top card tells you what to do. When he turns the card over, it showed a man carrying a sword and bending down to pick up 4 more. Tim smiled. The 5 of swords. It looks like you should find 5 brother-in-arms. Or rather, not send them away when they stand before you. You may even already have an ally. Stephanie had friends, but not so good that they would help her in this situation, so the tip was useless, because she lacked the resources. Visibly annoyed, she pointed to the last card. What does this one tell me? She asked. The future. It will tell you how everything will turn out. Stephanie pushed her chair back. No offense, but I'm out of here. Save your fairy tales for the next person. The boy sighed and didn't seem surprised. Many people are afraid of the future. I'm not afraid, I just don't believe in it, she replied snappishly. She could tell from his expression that he didn't believe her. He even had the audacity to raise his eyebrow, self-righteously. So she turned over the last card. The Hanged Man was written there. But no one was hanging around there. There was only a puppet lying on the floor, as if someone had cut its strings. Tim opened his mouth to explain, but Stephanie was already running away. Suddenly, the place was no longer safe. She had to get out of there fast. Wait, Tim called, but she ignored him and ran out of the store. He didn't follow her. After that, however, it was quite a guessing game as to how she could stop her father. She knew that he was ruthless and got a magical sword, but other than that, nothing. How could she defeat him if there was nothing else? But maybe that was the wrong question. The right question would probably be, how could she get more information? Stephanie had no idea, so she went to the only place that had an old book about everything, the library. Hesitantly, she approached the info desk, where a woman in a wheelchair was typing away. Excuse me, Steph blushed slightly. Where can I find books about magic? Green eyes seemed to pierce through her, and then a key was pushed towards her. We keep them behind this door. A slender finger pointed to a door behind, which Stephanie suspected was a storage room. But when she opened the door, the whole room glowed with magic. It was small and contained just 100 books, but the blonde was nevertheless briefly overwhelmed by its aura. Suddenly, she felt so small and insignificant. Wow, she exclaimed. Shh, replied the room. No, not the room. Steph rose. She hadn't even noticed a black-haired girl standing in the middle of the room. Excuse me, she whispered, hurrying to search the shelves. Silence fell until she let out a cry of triumph when she found a book titled Magical Weapons and Tools. The girl behind her stamped her foot angrily. Stephanie turned around, annoyed. I know this is a library, but you can't just put up with these few moments of disruption. Cold eyes stared back at her. The girl opposite her rolled up her sleeve, revealing strange symbols tattooed on her skin. Stephanie frowned and was about to ask what all that was about, but the girl already pulled one of the symbols off her skin and stuck it on Steph's hand, as if it were a sticker and not ink. And it wouldn't come off, no matter how hard Stephanie rubbed it. What is that? She yelled at the girl, but no sound came out of her mouth. I'll take the sigil off you as soon as I leave, the teenager promised, and simply continued reading her book. Stephanie considered punching her. Only the fear that the spell would last forever made her take a breath and look at her own book. She leafed through the pages until she stopped. The sword she was looking for was pictured on one page. Excalibur, it said. Stephanie didn't even bother reading the myth because she knew the Disney version, and that would suffice. She photographed it anyway and waved her hand in front of the girl's face. The girl sighed and picked up the sigil again. "Thank you very much," Stephanie hissed. She wanted to leave, but the black girl held her back and handed her a necklace. It had a strange red bat pendant. "What am I supposed to do with this?" She grinned. "Tim said you could use some help." Stephanie's eyes widened and she ran away. This wasn't normal. She had left the boy just an hour ago and already his girlfriend knew who she was? That didn't make sense. It wasn't until she walked 3 blocks that she realized she had put the pendant around her neck. "What am I supposed to do with this?" Stephanie muttered angrily to herself as she turned the object in her hand and walked mindlessly down the street. Strangely enough, she didn't find the answer. The answer found her. "You received an invitation?" Someone looked at her with wide eyes. She just pursed her lips. "Excuse me?" The man pointed to the pendant in her hand. "If you have one of those, you can join the Red Hood Club. I'll gladly take it off your hands for $100. She bit her lip briefly, and then decided she had nothing to lose. "That's nice, but I'd rather you tell me where the club is." And the man did, although you could see his disappointment. Stephanie was confused because she could have guessed that the necklace was a lucky charm and not an invitation. What good would a trendy club do her? She showed the bouncer the pendant and had a very strange feeling. The man let her through, and as soon as she stood in the entrance hall, Stephanie knew what had struck her as odd. She didn't hear any loud music. She didn't smell any alcohol or vomit. Everyone even looked clean here, apart from the fact that the walls were covered in graffiti. This looked more like a hotel than a club. At least, that's what the service desk promised, behind which stood a woman in a red robe. The hood covered the entire upper half of her face. "Welcome, sister," smiled the redhead, handing her a robe. "I've never seen you here before, but Bizarro wouldn't have let you in without an invitation, would he?" Steph showed her the bat pendant, and the woman smiled. "I am Artemis, and I hope you enjoy our cult." As Steph followed the corridor, she kept looking into the rooms. People were praying there or reading old, dusty books aloud. Latin. One person used a spell to extinguish the candles and cheered loudly. But none of that helped. And then she saw the door, with the bat spray painted on it, and opened it without thinking. Polite people would knock. The guy in the room grinned at her. She blushed because he wasn't wearing a t-shirt, which she could understand. His muscular body was drenched in sweat because he had just been training on the high bar. He swung back and forth, let go, did a triple somersault, and landed right in front of her, only to slam the door shut. "What can I do for you?" the man asked, flashing her his white teeth. She replied unimaginatively. "Have a seat," he said, offering her a chair at the edge. She didn't want to sit down, but she didn't like the idea of refusing his offer. It would hurt him, and that wasn't something she could allow to happen. She shook her head and looked at him again. "Tell me, what brings you here?" And there it was. His voice is magical. It spread out and wanted to capture Stephanie. When she didn't open her mouth, he frowned. She grinned to herself as he tried again. "I don't want to pressure you, but if you don't tell me, I can't help you." And there it was. The urge to tell him everything. Cunning guy. The door flew open and a man came in who was at least as good looking as the other one. They looked like brothers. Both had black hair and were well built. The difference was in their eyes, green and blue, a single strand of white hair in the latter, and the fact that the blue-eyed one was smiling while the other one was angrily holding the door open. "I'd prefer it if you took off, Dick," grumbled the newcomer. Dick twisted his mouth. "I'm talking to one of your new recruits, Jay. Don't you think you should make her feel like she wants to stay here?" Jay apparently didn't think so, because he coldly pushed the guy out of the room. Only then did he turn to Steph and look her up and down. "Cass called. What do you need help with?" "What is this?" Stephanie asked instead. The guy loosened his tie and threw his suit jacket on the floor. "This is the Red Hood Club, or my personal cult. They heard that I rose from the dead and have been idolizing me ever since. At first, I didn't want anyone to know about it, but then Dick and I came up with a plan." Stephanie had a bad feeling about this. He lures some people here, convinces them to join the cult. As a siren, it's child's play for him. So the really bad guys stay in this building, voluntarily and unaware that they're trapped. The bad guys? The men and women who possess magic and use it against humanity. The Bat Clan have been fighting against this in Gotham for 10 years. But there are always new recruits. And what is your magic? Somehow, Stephanie became suspicious. Why was this guy telling her this so openly and honestly? I don't have any. Never had any. Is that a problem? She raised her hands. I'm not magical either. The man looked at her, and somehow his green eyes seemed unnatural to her. So, he interrupted her thoughts. What do you need help with? I've been nice and all because cast and tempting is important, but I've never been patient. I waited for someone once in my life, and that was the end of my life. The guy sounded crazy, but he couldn't be crazier than the day she had. My father is trying to kill the black magician of Gotham with the glowing sword he used on somebody today, which is probably Excalibur. I have to stop him. Wow, when she said it out loud, it sounded even crazier. And what really annoyed her were the tears that welled up in her eyes. But it was all just too much. Magic existed. Her father was a murderer. She had to do something, but she felt completely overwhelmed. Jason handed her a tissue and looked grim. I hate to tell you this, but you don't actually have to do anything. I briefly tried to kill Bruce myself, but no one can do it. He'll succeed, she shook her head. The man in front of her sighed. Fine. How about this? We, my siblings and I, will fight alongside you. Bruce may not be the best father, but he deserves protection, even if he doesn't need it and will never thank us for it. The Black Magician of Gotham was his father? That was unbelievable. She wanted to refuse because she could do it alone, but something made her ask. You and your siblings, are there 5 of you? Jason grinned. Did you draw the 5 of Swords card? I love that bitch. Cards. She was supposed to believe in the magic of cards? If she did, the whole thing would end with the Hanged Man, and that didn't sound good. But what choice did she have? Yes, please help me. By the way, I'm Stephanie Brown. She introduced herself to break the silence. They were walking back down the hallway to the entrance hall. Jason Todd. Dick Grayson. The siren smiled at them from the end of the hallway. The little one needs their help. I'm not little, Steph complained. The men looked down at her and she gave them the finger. What would have backfired with the others made them both laugh. Blondie's got guts. I like that. May I ask what this is about? Dick asked his brother, and as Steph now knew, they were indeed brothers. Good to know that her sense of the situation hadn't completely disappeared. Couldn't you just force him to tell you? She frowned. Jason's expression turned to stone while Dick turned pale. No, never again. I'll just check something with Artemis, Jason said, walking away. Dick watched him go with a miserable expression on his face. I smell a backstory, Stephanie sniffed playfully. Dick didn't look at her and began to talk into the air. When Jason was adopted, I didn't take it well. I was still young. I felt threatened by him. It was as if he had stolen my position in the clan, even though he didn't even have any magic. During an argument, I ordered him to leave. He did. It was only later that I realized what I had done. We searched for days, and when we finally found him, it was too late. An enemy of our father had gotten his hands on him. He took a shaky breath. I killed him. So no, I will never give him or any of my siblings an order again. The girl didn't know what to say. Her expression must have given her away because when he returned, Jason sighed heavily. Did he bring up the old story again? Sorry, I thought she should know what she's getting herself into. Not a bad idea. I had the same thought. And with that, he held out a whip to her. A gift from my stepmother, in spirit. Selena is an Egyptian magician and has enchanted this piece of jewelry with a few spells. She happened to leave it here. Artemis stole it, whispered Dick. Stephanie laughed and took the stolen goods. As soon as she tucked it into her belt, she felt stronger, more prepared. Stephanie should have taken his warning more seriously. During the drive to the Wayne skyscraper in the city center, she didn't waste a single thought on the upcoming meeting. She just thought that everything would be fine now. "What are we doing here?" she asked in front of the doors to the skyscraper. "Visiting our family. They live on the top floor," Dick explained. Steph's jaw dropped. "You were adopted by Bruce fucking Wayne? You're rich?" That explained Jason's expensive suit and Dick's charming manner. Jason rolled his eyes. "Magic exists, but it comes with money and a name." Angrily, she stomped ahead into the elevator. "I've already accepted the magic thing, but you didn't mention that you're Waynes." "We both kept our last names," Dick shrugged. She forgot the whole discussion the moment she saw the view over Gotham. The city was as dark as ever, but she could see the lights of magic. Dark blue wisps of smoke, black circles, fiery tongues. The view can leave you speechless. She turned in surprise at the familiar voice. "Tem? What are you doing here?" "I wanted to apologize, Purple. I'm afraid I scared you pretty badly." She shook her head. "You just read my cards. I reacted badly. My fault." "You said your name was Stephanie." Jason approached suspiciously. "Then she must have lied to me," Tem grinned, as if he hadn't figured that out long ago. Now he even pouted. "Although, I'm surprised that she would tell the truth to my uncharming big brother of all people. I could understand if it were Dick, but you?" "Cheeky devil." Jason ran his fingers through his hair. "Are you a Wayne too?" Stephanie asked, horrified. "I was adopted by Bruce, yes," the boy nodded. "I'm also a fortune teller." The boy foresaw my death. He went to Bruce and kicked off the search, but it didn't help. The younger boy looked guiltily at the floor. Jason ran his fingers through his hair again. "But he tried. That's all that matters." "If I had been faster—" "Oh, kid. Don't make me angry, and don't make yourself miserable." "But those are your natural states." The voice was young and arrogant, so it suited the boy standing behind her, who was shouting like a rich brat. With his black hair and green eyes, he fit in well with the family. Only his complexion was darker and his expression too serious for his age or these jokers. "We've talked about this, Damien," Dick lectured him. "I should cut your tongue out, siren." "I never forced you to do anything. Unlike—" The man interrupted himself. In fact, something like sadness glinted in Damien's eyes. The child turned away snorting. "I'm going to get Cass." "Damien will probably insult you often," Tim warned her. "But he's talented," Dick said. "He's an invocation mage." Where he grew up, he was supposed to perform invocations through animal sacrifices. That is, absorb the power of the animal spirit and use it. He didn't want to. Here with us, he only performs evocations. He summons animal spirits to help us in battle. Oh, and he's Bruce's son, not adopted. And Cass uses sigil magic. She was forced to learn it and focused all of her concentration on it. That's why she uses it as her preferred medium. Before Bruce took her and she couldn't even speak. Jason explained further. "And how did you come to Bruce Wayne?" she asked the elder. The two had told everyone else's stories beautifully, but veiled their own. Dick became sad. "I lived in a circus. My parents fell to their deaths during a performance. I told them never to fall. They had no choice when the trapeze rope broke. Bruce was there that day and took me in. It probably reminded him of his own parents' death. Bruce's parents were murdered by a black magician in Crime Alley. Since then, he's been trying to keep the magical community in Gotham under control. And there's a lot of work, because Gotham spits out magicians like there's no tomorrow," Tim quickly explained. Steph had heard about Wayne's murder, and there had been no mention of magic in the newspaper. It made her wonder how much she hadn't noticed yet. "He found me in Crime Alley, too. I just wanted to steal the magic tires from his car. The binding spell was pretty good, and it would have been worth a lot, especially in Crime Alley. They sell black magic goods there like crazy." "What kind of goods?" Steph asked curiously, and regretted it when she heard the answer. "You know, the usual. Blood from virgins, hair from 7-year-olds, the tongue of a teenager. Without Bruce, I probably wouldn't have survived much longer." A smiley face appeared in front of him, and everyone looked at Cass, the girl from the library. "So that's how you need him," Steph realized. Cass smiled and nodded. "Do you want that pendant back?" She shook her head, and somehow that relieved Steph. It's nice to see the family together. Too bad Master Bruce can't be here. The man who had spoken was old and dressed like a butler. You have to try his herbal cookies. One of those and any broken bone heals itself. He's a genius, Tim whispered. It was very kind, Master Tim. The boy next to her blushed and then said in a normal voice, And he has good ears, too, though that has nothing to do with magic. Where is the old man? Jason wanted to know. He's recovering from a fight, Master Jason. You knocked him out, complained the youngest. Indeed, Master Damien, I did. Dick grinned. Good decision. Otherwise, he'd probably never go to sleep. Preparations for the battle progressed quickly, as they did not have much time to prepare. Steph told them that her father would be at Wayne Tower in an hour. Cass figured out how. Excalibur could not only cut through necks, but also through space, create a portal. Tim closed his eyes and then told each of them one by one what actions they had to refrain from if they wanted to survive. Jason cleaned his pistols while Dick fetched his eskrima sticks and took the weapons out of his younger brother's hands. All three wanted to protest, but he looked at them imploringly. Don't make me order you to stay safe, because I will do that despite my oath. So Tim gave in. Cass placed a sigil on her brother's and Stephanie's hands to reduce their vulnerability. Damien summoned a bear. It obviously took a lot of strength, judging by the way he sank into the sofa, but he left the bear there. Stephanie gratefully accepted Tim's bow staff and took a deep breath. Soon it would be time. Soon she would stop her father. The three of them waited on the roof, deliberately avoiding the traps Cass had drawn. You can wait with the others, Dick suggested. We wouldn't blame you. Look at her, Jason rolled his eyes. That girl is too determined for even you to do anything with your magic. Stephanie had a quick way to reply on the tip of her tongue, but she immediately forgot it when a glowing crack opened up in the floor and her father stepped out with 5 henchmen. Steph? His eyes widened behind the mask. What are you doing here? Preventing you from killing anyone else. She assumed a fighting stance and refrained from insults. Tim said it wouldn't do her any good. She had to trust him if she couldn't trust her father. You warned them, the man realized. She couldn't see him as her dad, with an angry expression. Right, and now we're going to kick your and your buddy's asses. All hell broke loose. She noticed out of the corner of her eyes how 2 henchmen attacked the bear with fire spells. On the other side, Dick was fighting, and at the same time convincing the only woman that she should sit this one out. Jason took on a bull of a man, and Steph had to look away. Seeing Jason fight, it was hard to believe he had no magic. She attacked her father. The bow staff was immediately cut in half by the sword. At least, that's what she had expected. But it held firm, and a curly cross lit up on its surface. Cass, the girl was brilliant, just like Tim. She only wished she had combat experience, but when she fought her father, the mastermind, she realized that he was not a swordsman. He held the sword and swung it, but he knew no technique and got in his way. Once she realized that, the rest was child's play, because she knocked the sword out of his hand with her whip, and hit him hard enough on the head that he fell to the ground. Get up, and I'll hit you again, she threatened, clutching the weapons tightly. Dick cheered, and she heard applause. Not bad, Blondie, Jason admitted. After that, everything was rather blurry. The man and the one woman were led away, and Steph stuffed a vanilla cookie into her mouth, which filled her with warmth. She was calm and relaxed. See? Tim asked with a smile. Everything turned out just as I predicted. Because my father fell to the ground? The girl frowned. The boy shook his head. The last card was meant to symbolize that you could break away from him, that you're no longer hanging on his strings. And somehow Steph had to smile at these words, because they filled her with more warmth than the magic cookies ever could. Only after her 4th vanilla cookie did she suddenly freeze. What do I do now? She asked the group. I can't pretend there's no magic. I can't go back to that boring life. Jason snorted. You do realize you have magic, right? Huh? She blurted out. You have the 3rd eye, Tim explained. You see magic, feel it, and can even deflect it away from yourself. Haven't you noticed? No, she said. I thought everyone could see it once they witnessed the spell. Idiot, Damien commented. Cass grinned at her. You're staying with us. Part of the team. And Stephanie could live with that. She became part of the Bat Clan. Because there were more magical villains who needed to be stopped. After all, this was still Gotham. Alright guys, and that is the end of Now You See Me by Dark Nymphs Translate, parentheses Dunkelniffen. I hope you guys like this one. I know it's a little bit different because we usually focus on Jason. I've been wanting to read more fics where it's a female main character and everything, but you guys know probably by now that my favorite character is Red Hood and it will always be Red Hood, so it's kind of hard to deviate from that, but I did enjoy this fic. I liked the magical aspect of it. I don't really read magic fics that often, but I do love magic in general, and I read a lot of fantasy, so that was really nice. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's funny how Jason was a cult leader. I think that's just like a funny little thing. It fits with his character, like I could see it, but also this is Jason Todd. Robin gives me magic, you know, to where it's just like, of course, he's the one character who doesn't have magic, but he is a cult leader, because of course. And then there's the fact that he's the one character who doesn't have magic, basically, right? How does he see the magic going on? Because near the end, Steph was like, I thought everybody who like encounters magic can like see it and everything, and Jason doesn't have magic. So what is he seeing during those fights? Is it kind of like a Percy Jackson thing to where Annabeth's father was just like shooting at random stuff and everything? Is that how Jason fights? Or does he have like a charm or something that can help him see the magic? Can he always see the magic? Because even as a kid, he was trying to like, you know, like get the tires for the charm or whatever. So how did it happen to where he could see and know about magic so early on, but he himself is not magical? I don't know. Overall, this is a very good fic, and I'll see you next video.